Guten Tag, Lab. This is Mr. Liniger. Let's make history today as we go over Unit 2, Day 6. Let's get started with our daily punishment. Never trust an atom. They make up everything. Science joke. Science is fake, but I still make jokes about it. We're going to be spending the next 2 days going over Russia during the early modern period. Our terms for today: autocracy, boyars, Grand Duchy of Warsaw, Ivan the Great, the Third Rome, Ivan the Terrible, the Time of Troubles, Pobrecito, Cossacks, Romanov Dynasty, Peter the Great, Westernization, St. Petersburg, Catherine the Great, Pugachev's Rebellion, and Enlightened Absolutism. We're going to go over the Russian political, cultural, and economic developments after the Mongols, the effects of Westernization, and the reforms made by Peter and Catherine the Great, and the economic and social developments of Russia during the Romanov post-Ivan dynasty. So let's talk a little bit about some generalizations about Russia. Russia tended to escape most of the Renaissance, Reformation, and Enlightenment because they were conquered by the Mongols. There was deep ethnic and religious divisions in Russia, many ethnic groups and religious minorities, including Jews, Gypsies. Major religion was Orthodox. It was a multinational state. They had an autocracy. An autocracy is like an absolute monarchy. The elites were the Russian princes. They're called the boyars. They controlled vast estates. They had serfs there. Western Europe will end serfdom during this time, but Russia will keep serfs until the 1800s. Serfs were often exploited, mistreated. There were few cities, small to no merchant class. Russia economically is going to be heavily agricultural with little industry. They're going to export grain to Western European countries. That's their primary export. Russia, at the start of this time period, Muscovy will become the capital during the Mongols, which is Moscow. That was where they collected tribute. Ivan III is known as Ivan the Great. He's going to be the one that declares Russian independence from the Mongols in the 1480s. He'll gather the Russians together and kick the Mongols out. A new group of people that will be created are peasants on the steppes. The steppes are like right on the border of Central Asia. They're going to be free peasants that are going to settle into newly conquered land. They're going to protect Russia from the nomadic invaders, from the steppes, from the Muslim Turks. They're going to live as Orthodox steppe nomads. They're going to be given their freedom. In return, they're given land, and they protect the Russian border in the steppe area of Central Asia, the Cossacks. The Third Rome is the name given to Moscow in the 16th century. The first Rome was Rome, which fell in 476, the Roman Empire. The Byzantine Empire was the second Rome. But after the Byzantines fell to the Ottomans, the Russians claimed to be the Third Rome because they also were Orthodox. Ivan the Great is going to build a centralized government. He's going to model after the Byzantines. He's going to call himself the Tsar, which is after the Greek title of Caesar. It is going to be Caesaro-Papist. The Tsar will be in charge of both the Orthodox Church and the government. Ivan IV was problematic. He's known as Ivan the Terrible. He was Ivan III's grandson. He was noted for his erratic, violent rule. His wife was murdered. He beat his own son to death. One day he saw his daughter-in-law wearing a dress that he thought was promiscuous. It was showing too much clothes. His daughter-in-law was pregnant. He started beating her. His son tried to step in to prevent his father from beating his wife to death, and he beat his son to death instead. He was known for murdering animals, torturing people. Really nice guy. He confiscated large estates. He redistributed land to his supporters. He's going to create his own secret police called the Oprinchki. He'll use terror, cruelty to subdue civilian populations. After Ivan the Terrible's death, there'll be a civil war. He didn't have any descendants. That's what happens when you kill your own son. This is called the Time of Troubles. He'll die without an heir. For 15 years, from 1598 to 1613, we'll have a civil war in Russia. Eventually, a new dynasty will reign in Russia called the Romanov dynasty. The first czar will be Mikhail Romanov in 1613. He was the son of the patriarch, which is like the head priest, like the Orthodox version of the Pope. He'll form the Romanov dynasty, which will last all the way until 1917. Let's talk a little bit about some of the Russians that are going to try to reform Russia. Big one is Peter the First, also known as Peter the Great. Peter the Great was super interesting, and he lived a super interesting life. As a young child, he's going to see his sister seize power from him because he was a child. His sister and stepbrother will take power from him. His stepbrother was kind of was like mentally handicapped, but his sister's really going to rule for him. He's eventually going to seize power from her and force her to a nunnery. Peter the Great was 6'7". He did not take his job seriously at first. He liked to party. He had his own secret society where they would march down Russia. They would pretend, they would satire religion. They would have their own fake pope. They would drink beer and like walk with a crucifix made out of pretzels. He would have his own little dwarfs that he would have do stuff for. Eventually, he will become more serious about his job. He was fascinated by Western Europe and their technology. He's going to go to Western Europe incognito. He's going to pretend to be a regular Russian noble to see like and study the Western European military and science and industry. He's going to try to reform Russia. He's going to take ideas from the Enlightenment, except for the democratic ideas. That idea is called enlightened absolutism. You take a lot of the rationalism from the Enlightenment, but you keep the absolute monarchy. He was not the only one that did that. Frederick the Great also does that, but he's a good example of enlightened absolutism. He's going to do military reforms to build a more powerful, modern army. He'll build a navy, and he's going to focus on creating a larger, more modern land army. He'll offer better pay and more modern weapons to peasants. Aristocratic officers will be ordered to study math and science abroad to try to create make it more modernized. He'll build the largest European army. In the Great Northern War, Russia will defeat Sweden. They'll get some of Swedish land, and that's how they're going to create and build their capital, St. Petersburg. Peter the Great will also do bureaucratic reforms. He'll create something called the Table of Ranks, which allows for social mobility for Russian minor nobles and even peasants to some extent. And it's going to allow for them to increase their position in the bureaucracy based on their merit. He'll create a new nobility based on service, loyalty, and success in the army. There will be some social reform. Russia was very patriarchal before Peter the Great. One of the marriage customs in Russia in the wedding is the father-in-law would give the new husband a whip. That was symbolic that the husband could do whatever he wants with the woman now. Peter the Great is going to get rid of a lot of that things. He's going to abolish the seclusion of women, encourage social mixing of the sexes. He'll order his subjects to wear Western clothing. He'll order the men to shave their beards. If they don't, he'll tax them. St. Petersburg will become his new Western city, the city to the west, the capital of the West. It was a city built on the Baltic Sea in 1703. It will be the headquarters for the Russian Navy, its administration, and center for government. Right here's a meme. This shows Peter the Great. It shows like some Scandinavian woman who knows how to party. This is going to be his wife, Catherine the First. He marries a peasant, which is actually pretty cute. He actually did love her, and they like to party. Then you see like the Russian woman from a good noble family. Memes. There were limits to westernization. Russia is going to have a history of czarinas, female czars, Catherine the First, Peter's wife, Anna and Elizabeth, his daughters. There was no ruling at first that prohibited female ruling. These czarinas, just like the czars, will rule Russia with an iron fist. They'll all continue the policies of westernization and expansion. You should know Catherine II. She's also known as Catherine the Great. She married Peter the Great's grandson. He was an unpopular czar, and she killed him with her lover. She was originally German, but she's going to get the support of the Boyars. In return for them letting her do westernization, she's going to basically give them control over the serfs. She'll continue Peter the Great's policies of westernization, and she was attracted originally to the Enlightenment. One of the things that's going to kind of turn her away from the Enlightenment is called Pugachev's Rebellion. Pugachev's Rebellion was a rebellion of Cossacks, exiles, peasants, and serfs who were upset about some of the inequality. They're protesting taxes, and they're going to rebel. They are going to be led by Pugachev. He claimed to be the long dead Peter III. They're going to kill thousands of nobles and officials and priests. This will be crushed by the Imperial Army in 1774. But this is going to scare Catherine the Great away from the Enlightenment, from the democratic ideas of the Enlightenment. Pugachev's Rebellion. So both Pugachev's Rebellion and the French Revolution, which we'll talk about next unit, are going to sour Catherine's love of the Enlightenment. She's going to start to reverse some of her policies of westernization. And even though Russia will westernize under her and Peter the Great, they still will be far behind Western Europe. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. Until next time, deuces. Deuces, deuces.